Welcome to Retiring Well. Listen, folks, we got a great show for you this week. We're going to be talking about sunken cost trap, explain a little bit about what that is, required minimum distributions, the power of indexing, systematic risk, and a little bit about Medicare Medigap. So stay tuned, you're going to love it.
Retiring Well, brought to you by Centennial Wealth Advisory, financial advisors specializing in retirement planning and serving all of Northern Michigan. Retiring Well, helping you plan for a successful and comfortable retirement. Retiring Well, plan to retire well.
I want to talk to you about what's called the sunken cost trap. Now, this is a mindset we can get ourselves caught up in when it has to do with purchases and the like. Let me give you an example so you can kind of better understand this. Think of that vehicle you might have owned in the past. You know, it might have been older, you didn't have the money to get a new vehicle, so you're buying this car, you're fixing it up, you're continually putting money into it, and you know in your mind how much money you got into that vehicle. Now, you get to the point, you've got so much money in that vehicle, you don't want to get rid of it because you know how much you have into it. Okay, this is what we call the sunken cost trap. Now, what's the problem with it? Well, how we should be looking at that vehicle is, yes, we've got all this money into it, but it is what it is as of today. We have to look at it, how is it going to best serve us from this day forward? If there is another vehicle I can get into that can serve me better, then why would I stay with the one that I've got all this money into? Because again, you have to look at it as it is today. So if there's another vehicle I can get into, it's probably not going to have as much in repairs, and it can better serve me going forward, then I'd probably better be able to make that switch, right? Folks, the reason I bring this up is this can happen with individual stocks as well, or maybe our mutual fund or the like. We know how much money we put into that instrument, all right? It might have taken a drop, maybe dipped down, or whatever the case might be, and now we hold on to it, and we think that that's going to, serve us better because of the money we put into it, when maybe the better way to look at it is there something else that can better serve me going forward, and making that switch. We do this with strategies as well. You could have an investment strategy that you've bought into, or a stock picking strategy that you bought into, and you're going to stay with it because you know how much effort you've got into it. But if there's something better that you can do going forward that would better serve you forward, then getting stuck in that kind of a mindset could be hurting you. Now, I've watched this happen with sharp, quick losses in the market. We had one not long ago in the fourth quarter of 2018. Market dropped very quickly in a very short period of time. I think it was like 16, 17% in just a 3-month period. And people were afraid to make a move because that was their strategy. They knew what they had into it, and they were afraid that if they changed up, they weren't going to get it back. But what they should have been looking at is, what am I in today? What can better serve me going forward? So hopefully you found this valuable. It just giving you kind of an idea how sometimes we, in our own thinking, we can get caught, believing one way when maybe we should be a little bit more open-minded. So hopefully you found value in that. Give us a call if maybe we can be of any help.
Your grandchildren are precious to you. They are your life. This is your time to have that special relationship. Taking care of yourself is taking care of them. Centennial Wealth Advisory is offering a free, no-obligation retirement review to make sure you don't run out of money during your retirement. Centennial Wealth Advisory. Your best is yet to come.
In this segment, I want to talk to you about required minimum distributions, or what we call RMDs. Now, what are they? You have to understand, if you're in an IRA, this is an account that you put in with pre-tax dollars. Okay, it grew tax deferred, so no tax has ever been paid on this account. And now, who's there that wants to have their money? It's Uncle Sam, all right? So they put an age requirement in that said that once you reach a certain age, you have to start taking money out of these accounts. Now, the old rule used to be 70 and a half. Now, don't ask me where they came up with a half. I've never been able to understand that, where that came from, why they didn't just use a round number, but it was there. So in the year that you turned age 70 and a half, you were required to take a required minimum distribution out. Now, a lot of people say, well, how much is that? It's basically 3.6% of your total IRAs you had as of the last calendar year. And then every year thereafter, based on these lifetime tables, that percentage was growing. So this is money now they're requiring you to take out because why? They want their tax dollars from this, right? Because it's money that's never been taxed. Now with the new Secure Act that signed into law in 2019, they've raised that age now to 72. Now they're using a round number, right? So here's the deal. As of December 31st of 2019, anytime before that, if you turned age 70 and a half, you fell under the old rule. You now have to take required minimum distributions in that year. If you turned 70 and a half after that date, which would be December 31st of 2019 or into 2020, the new rule is you can wait to age 72. That's when you're required to start taking them out. Now, a lot of people like to be able to take those required minimum distributions and give directly to charity. That was allowed under the old law. Now it's still allowed under the new law. You can take that required minimum distribution, give it to charity, and then you'll get a 1099 at the end of the year, but it will be not taxable. Now, that's advantageous to somebody who can't itemize their deductions and take charitable contributions. So if you're somebody that's required to take these distributions out, you don't have enough charitable deductions to be able to itemize with, then that's a great way to give. Just give it directly to charity and then you don't have to pay tax on that income. Now, a lot of people want to try to do the required minimum distribution and make a Roth conversion at the same time. That we can't do. We can't use a required minimum distribution to satisfy a Roth conversion, so that's very important to know. The other thing we'll have, if you're that person that fortunately has money, doesn't need the required minimum distributions, well, you can just put it into a savings account, or maybe you can direct it to life insurance that can maybe leave a bigger legacy to your heirs. So if you're somebody that just wants to know more about the required minimum distributions, then I encourage you, give us a call. We'll gladly sit down and show you how they work, when you're supposed to take them, and see if it's beneficial to you. Folks, I was talking about that sunken cost trap. I can't say it enough. You really got to look at, if you've got a portfolio of stocks, you really need to look at that portfolio and say, if you got any stocks there where, maybe they're down and you're just sitting there holding them, waiting for them to come back up, you really need to look at, what's left, what value is left in that stock, and say, all right, going forward, I'm hoping this thing comes back, but is there something else some other stock I can put it in that I think will actually do better than that? If that's the case, then why are you holding on to it, right? I know it's like that car you got all that money into and you hate to get rid of it, but honestly, if I can take the value of that, sell it, and get into something of equal value that's going to do better for me going forward, you want to treat the same thing with your stocks. And then I just want to give you a hint. If you're ever getting into a stock and you're thinking it's going to do well, you're hoping it's going to do well, but you're not sure, consider trailing stop losses on that stock. So if I'm kind of trying to go in, I think it's going to go good, and let's say put a 25% trailing stop loss on it. So I can ride it up, but should it ever go down from its high by 25%, it's going to sell off, so I don't have to take any more of a loss. So anytime you're dealing with a stock, you're hoping to do well, but you want to kind of cover yourself, that's the way to do it. Regarding required minimum distributions, as you're aware, as of this calendar year, there's no requirement for an RMD. They kind of waived that with the CARES Act, at least for this year. But I also want to just bring up that this is a great time to do tax planning. What you want to do is you want to take those RMDs, if you're not taking them yet, and look ahead and say, when I do start taking them, where I'm going to be, how are they going to get taxed? What bracket do I find myself in? And, let's say I'm in that lower bracket and I can take my RMD and be in that lower bracket and stay there. That's a good thing, right? Because I'm buying out Uncle Sam at the lowest rate. But kind of find out where you're at in that. And is there going to be any room to maybe maximize that tax bracket for like Roth conversions? So, this is a time that you want to start doing a little bit of tax planning, and you kind of want to do that ahead of time. So if that's something you want, if that's something you think we might be able to help you with, then obviously give us a call. Now stay tuned because I'm going to talk about the power of indexing and I'm going to talk a little bit about systematic risk. So stay tuned.
We look forward to helping you plan to retire well.
I want to talk to you about what's called the power of indexing. Now folks, there's a lot of these insurance products out there that will have these indexing strategies, and I think it's important to just kind of understand how they work. First of all, on this axis here, I have $90,000, $100,000, $110,000, $120,000, $130,000. And then along this axis, I've got 5 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 years. Now, in each and every one of those years, the stock market, I'll pick, let's say the S&P 500 index, is going to make 10% in year 1. It's going to make 20% in year 2. It's going to lose 25% in year 3. It's going to make 5% in year 4, and then it's going to make 20% in year 5. So just one down year. Now, if you look at that, if you average it out, in that 5-year period, S&P 500 basically averaged about 6%. Now, I'm going to take an investment that starts off at $100,000 right here in this white line, and in the first year, it's going to be tied to the S&P 500 totally. So that investment went up 10%, so it went from 100 to 110,000. And the next year it grew 20%, so it from 110 went up to 132,000. But then had a 25% loss, so it went from 132 down to 99,000. Now at this point, after 3 years, they're just down 1,000, right? In the 4th year, it makes 5%, so they get up to 104,000. And then in the 5th year, it makes 20%, so they get all the way up to 125,000. Now, if you look at the average for that investment, 25,000 over 5 years, basically it averaged 5%. And it didn't average what this one did, the S&P did in that time, because it had that one down year, right? Now, take an index account. Okay, this is one that says you're going to give you, none of the down. So if the S&P 500 is down, you make 0. But if the S&P 500 is up, they're going to give you 50% of the up. Again, 50% of the up in the S&P 500, none of the down. So what happens? That same investment of $100,000 in the first year made half of this 10%, so it went up to basically $105,000. Okay. In the second year, it made 20%, so it went up to $115,000. But in the 3rd year, because the market was down, it made 0, so it stayed at $115,000. All right. In the 4th year, it makes 5%, so it goes up to $118,000, and then in the 5th year, it makes 20%, got all the way up to $130,000. Now, they only give you half the up and none of the down, but in that period of time, averaged 6%, and there was no risk of loss whatsoever. So folks, sometimes these accounts can be appropriate, but I just want to kind of illustrate how they work, so maybe if you have one of them, you can make a better decision regarding it. We here at Centennial Wealth Advisory realize that everyone has been affected by this coronavirus in one way or another. We watch our retirement accounts drop significantly in value, and we have questions. Can I retire in a recession? How will the coronavirus affect my retirement? How do I develop an income stream in a recession? Can I still retire this year? If these are concerns of yours, contact us today for a free initial consultation and learn what you can do now to help you weather the storm. Simply call 888-608-5825 or visit sunwealth.com and let us help you plan to retire well. I want to take this opportunity to talk to you about what systematic risk is in a portfolio. You know, there was a gentleman named Jack Bogle. He was the founder of Vanguard. I think it was 1974. And he really did a lot for the financial service industry. At that time, you had, mutual funds charging their fees to basically run a portfolio. And he was finding that, a large percentage of those mutual funds that were being managed couldn't even beat the benchmark. So let me give you an example. There's maybe a large cap mutual fund and its benchmark might be the S&P 500. Well, here you're paying this manager to run this fund in hopes that you can beat the benchmark, and many were not. So Jack Bogle comes along and he comes up with, the very first index fund. I think it was 1976. And basically here was the story. He said, listen, why pay a mutual fund these management fees to not beat the benchmark? Why don't you just own the benchmark? So he created these index counts. And he said, and by the way, because there's no trading going on, because you just basically own the index, you can have very low fees. And that story resonated with a lot of people. And it really brought a lot of, I'm going to say the word maybe honesty into the financial service industry, because what you started to see is a lot of mutual funds start to now lower their fees accordingly. So he did a lot of good, I would dare say. Now, he died in January, I think, of 2019. We were sad to see that. You fast forward a lot of years since he started that company, and you'll find that there are a lot of dollars now, a large percentage of retail investments that are in these kind of index accounts, because that was such a great story. Now there's some disadvantages to it, though, and I just want you to kind of see what they might be. First of all, it really goes against what I'd call stock picking 101. If you're going to go out and buy a stock, you want to reward the stock that has great earnings. Maybe it's growing its earnings. Maybe it has good track record of growing its revenue. Maybe it has a good market share. And you want to buy that stock because it's good value, because you think it's going to grow in value. Okay? Now, if you have a stock, though, that you don't think is meeting some criteria that you want, maybe its revenue is not growing, its earnings are not growing, maybe they're not paying a dividend, all right, and you see their valuations going down, then you're going to want to punish that stock accordingly by not owning it. Folks, when you're in an index fund, think about it. When you go into an index fund, you reward all 500 companies, whether they deserve it or not, but when you get out of that index fund, you're punishing all 500 companies, whether they deserve it or not. You could have the 10 best stocks in the world, and if they're part of that S&P 500 and people are dumping those index accounts, those stocks are going to get hit right with it. Systematic risk being simply this: all ships rising and falling with the tide. So you want to be careful of it. Just thought you'd find it valuable to know more about it. Boy, I hope you found that valuable. When I was talking about the power of indexing, I just want to remind you that, usually when you're dealing with something that has an indexing strategy associated with it, you're usually talking about something that has to do with an insurance product. Very important to understand. Now, they usually will come with specific insurance products like variable annuities or maybe fixed index annuities. Folks, know that these are very complicated instruments. They're not something you want to get into without, first talking with an advisor. You want to know what the pros and cons are. But one thing that they typically will have in them in an index strategy is basically the safety feature. The idea that it can't go down, but you can participate on the up at some level, depending on what it is. So, if you're somebody that absolutely has to have safety, if you're that person when you're talking about risk and I'll ask them, how much are you willing to lose? If you're that person that says, I don't want to lose absolutely anything. So if that, so that's going to be hard to do if you're in a typical investment account, right? Even if it's conservative, you have to be willing to live with, some tolerance for loss. But if you're somebody that absolutely cannot have any loss at all, well, maybe some products such as that with an indexing strategy may be appropriate. Under the circumstances, you definitely want to find that out. And then, again, don't always put all your eggs in one basket. Could it be part of the overall picture? Absolutely. Bonds, for example, why most people get into bonds? Because they want some safety in the overall structure of their portfolio. So bonds having such a low yield today, could maybe those index strategies be a, maybe a bond alternative, maybe be part of the picture. There may be a case for that. And then when I was talking about systematic risk, yeah, nothing is more frustrating when you think you got a great group of stocks and then there's fear striking the market, like we saw in March in that 2 weeks where it dropped 34%, I think, in a 2-week period. And lo and behold, all the stocks I was holding, they were dropping in value too. That's what you get with systematic risk. It works great when markets are cooperating, not so much when they're not, right? So just you want to be careful if you want to know what kind of risk you're taking in your portfolio and how subject your portfolio is to that kind of risk. You can extrapolate that, you can know that and find that out. So if you're somebody that wants to know that for yourself, give us a call. We'd be glad to help. Now stay tuned because we're going to talk about Medicare, Medigap. When you reach that ripe age of 65 and you got Medicare, now you got to have supplemental insurance. So what's that look like?
Your grandchildren are precious to you. They are your life. This is your time to have that special relationship. Taking care of yourself is taking care of them. Centennial Wealth Advisory is offering a free, no-obligation retirement review to make sure you don't run out of money during your retirement. Centennial Wealth Advisory. Your best is yet to come.
All right, in this segment, we want to talk about Medicare. Now, believe it or not, when you turn age 65, the whole world knows about it. And in that year, you're going to get inundated with all kinds of mail. You may even have people showing up at your doorstep to talk about Medicare. But what is happening here? Well, with Medicare, you qualify at age 65, and you get what's called Part A and Part B. Now, Part A is simply hospitalization coverage. Part B is outpatient coverage. Now, you have to understand with Medicare, it's going to cover about 80% of the cost. But there's gaps in the coverage. We'll call that just, the 20%. And if I want to get those gaps covered, I'm going to have what's called a supplemental plan. Okay, something that's just going to come alongside Medicare Part A and B, and it's going to fill all those gaps so that I can have closer to 100% coverage, okay? Now, what a lot of people don't understand is there's two different routes you can go. Okay, one route you can go for supplemental insurance is what we call the Medigap route. Okay, now this is government regulated. There's a number of different plans. They go from A to Z. And some are in force, some are not in force, some come and go. But you have to understand with all these plans, they're all regulated. So for example, if I have a Medigap Plan K, then that's going to be the same for everybody. There's going to be no difference. So it's a lot simpler in that regard because I know what my coverage is going to be. Now, one of the disadvantages to having a Medigap plan is that I have to get what's called prescription drug, or what they call Part D, has to be a separate plan. Okay, it's not included in my Medigap plan. The other thing that's not going to be included in my Medigap plan is maybe dental insurance. If that's something I want, then that's going to have to be a different plan. Now, one of the other disadvantages with a Medigap plan is although they're all regulated, they have to be the same. No insurance company has to charge the same price. So this is something that on a periodic basis you're going to want to get shopped, because if I've got Part K, let's say I got a Medigap Plan K with one insurance company, but with another insurance company the same exact plan might be cheaper, then I'm going to want to know that, right? So a lot of people, they get their plan and then they never look at it again, and this is really something that every so often should be shopped. No different than your home insurance or your car insurance, to see if maybe you can get a cheaper amount. Now here at Centennial Wealth, we actually do this for our clients. So they'll come in with their plan, we'll shop it for them, we'll show them where the best rates are. So if that's somebody like you and you haven't had somebody look at that in a while, then you're going to want to give us a call. Now, the other route you can go is what's called the Advantage Plan route. Okay, now again, this is just supplemental insurance. Now, why they call them an Advantage plan is simply this: it has all of these. It has eye and dental, it has prescription, all rolled into one plan. But the disadvantage is it's not regulated. They don't have to be the same. So I can have one Advantage plan with one insurance company and have another one with another insurance company, and they're going to be completely different. This kind of goes back to when we used to have to shop our health insurance, right? You know, Blue Cross's plan might not be the same as Priorities. And so we had to compare those plans to see, not only from a cost standpoint, but we had to see what the coverage was to see which one kind of made the best sense for us. So you got these two different ways to go, and what's best for you is going to be determined on what kind of coverage you want. You know, if you're going to be a traveler, you're going to be somebody maybe traveling around, and you want out of state health insurance coverage, maybe another doctor's plan. Then depending on what route you go, that could be a big difference. What if I'm somebody that travels out of country? You know, what kind of a plan do I want that might cover that? So a lot of it is going to be based on your lifestyle, but it's something that you want to be able to check into. So I encourage you, if you're somebody that's got a plan out there, hasn't been looked at in some time, and you think maybe you might be somebody that might be able to save some dollars, then give us a call. We'd be glad to give you a quote. Hi, welcome back. Listen, I hope you found that valuable. It's real important, when you get Medicare and you need that supplemental insurance, that you know the pros and cons in going either direction, whether you go the Medigap route or you go, the Medicare Advantage route. Very important to understand because, again, there's pros and cons either way, and you want to make the best decision for yourself. We've had so many people tell us, that they get inundated with so much information, and that year they're turning 65, they can't make heads or tails as to what direction they should go. Now, Centennial Wealth is not licensed to sell that supplemental insurance, but we have somebody in our office that is. And so if you're somebody that wants to have that conversation, you're getting close, want to know what it looks like, and you want to talk to an individual, then give our office a call. Again, we have somebody licensed in our office that would be more than happy to talk to you about those things. So folks, hopefully you found this show valuable. It's very important for us to make sure we get enough information out to you so you can always make the best decision for yourself. Education is key. Not every week are we going to have the topic that maybe you're interested in, but watch us each week. We're mixing it up. We're trying to give you a lot of different things, from estate planning to tax planning to income planning to investment management to Medicare Advantage planning. So we want to get a lot of that out to you. But if you ever want to get into specifics, you want to ask us questions, you want us to do an analysis for you, then certainly give us a call. We'd be glad to meet with you. Thank you.